Hey, well, Broken World Entertainment, and yes, it is finally over, the Acolyte, thank God. However, the cringe continues to roll with that show, because none other than Leslye Headland, the former personal assistant of Harvey Weinstein, is still out there talking absolute garbage and just showing us all how much she doesn't understand about Star Wars, and even more importantly, exposing herself for who she truly is. Like when you get a headline saying the Acolyte showrunner Leslye Headland explains why she views the Sith villain as an avatar for herself, that kind of tells you everything you need to really know. Not to mention that she claims that the head lesbian witch was turning into a big demon. It was actually her turning into the Force. Yeah, doesn't look like the Force, did she? And then, of course, her reasoning for why Osha ultimately killed Saul and turned to the dark side. Now, this woman is currently out there begging fans to push for Lucasfilm to greenlight a second season of this thing. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Disney, with all their agenda, all their push nonsense that they've been spewing for. All this show's been pushed back with so much racial hatred and this and that and all the bigots and everything else. They win if we say no, and yet the show is one of their biggest failures. How could you possibly justify giving it a second season? But let's start with why Leslye Headland, the former personal assistant of Harvey Weinstein, claims that Osha killed Saul. Why did she do it? Well, she killed him because he was imposing benign sexism on her. Yeah. So in an interview with Collider, the interviewer, Maggie something Lovett or something like that, asked Headland, what's so interesting about that moment where Osha kills Saul is how much is conveyed even while he's choking on his words. Also, and maybe this was my impression of it, but my first thought was he doesn't even give her the agency to make this choice herself because he's accepting his fate. It just adds so much more insult to injury. You can't even let her get a satisfactory kill because you're like, it's okay, it's so good. Like, even just that statement from this weird nutball of an interviewer is ridiculous. You're saying this character who you're supposed to be rooting for, who's now murdering another character that you were meant to be rooting for, has the murder been taken away from her because he says it's okay? Like, what kind of delusional world do these people live in? But Headland responds saying, we also knew that it was always going to be the betrayal of the father, and I knew we had to juxtapose Luke's forgiveness and Vader's redemption. We're like, this is a story about the Sith, so that's not gonna happen. She then affirms Levette's comment. You're absolutely right. There's this thing that's called benign sexism, and part of it is this parental protractionism. It seems like this good thing, but like you said, there's this, I have to protect you from everything. I have to make sure you're okay. I have to tell you what track to get on. And then once you're on that track, I need to support you. Ultimately, what happens is, again, this is a father-daughter relationship. As women evolve in their lives and develop their own personalities separate from their fathers, at some point, they have to reject that protectionism she asserted. So you're basically saying, kill your father. That's just to break free. What? Has somebody got daddy issues? As for psycho bitch turning into psycho spirit smoke demon beast thing, the Jedi did nothing wrong in that moment. I hate to break it to you, Leslye, but they did nothing wrong, because we can even look at this moment. We can see what the interaction was when Saul and Tolban arrives into the camp, the base, whatever it is. Have a look at what they say when they arrive. What the interaction is between the Jedi and the space lesbian witches.
Take another step and it will be your last.
It was foolish to come back here, Jedi.
We come with noble intentions.
You wish to know if we will allow Osha to join you. To be raised by an institution instead of a family.
Okay, so you see they're very defensive about it. They're like almost taking up arms. They're like, you shouldn't be here. You know, they're basically calling them out. Oh, you know, your goodness will destroy you. Yada, yada, yada. And then Psycho Bitch turns into this space smoke demon thing, which Leslye Headland is trying to claim was her ascending to become the Force, where Saul then sees this scary demon thing before him and looks across and sees who he thought was Osha, even though he should be able to tell them apart. He thinks it's Osha, but he sees the child starting to get disintegrated and makes the choice, I must sacrifice one life for the child. That's what he does. And it's her response that follows it. Let's take a look at that scene.
I was going to let Osha go. It's what she wants. It's what she wants.
So she turns into this big smoke demon thing, looks creepy as hell, sharp teeth, black eyes, starts disintegrating the child. Saul makes the decision, I'm gonna have to do something here. I'm sacrificing her for the girl. Runs a lightsaber through a cloud of smoke that for some reason she decides to rematerialize around the lightsaber. Well done. Sure, you could have just floated away, but whatever. And then follows up, I was gonna let her go with you. She chose you. She wanted to be with you. It's like, why did you have such a standoffish attitude when they arrived? Why did you not say, don't worry Jedi, the children are safe and we're letting Osha go with you? No, she straight up was like, you're interfering here, you're not wanted, you're not welcome, blah, blah, blah. You know, they're all running around, they're lifting, you know, they've all got space bow and arrows pointed at all of them, all this stuff. And then once you turn into this demon and you're murdered for it, your reaction was to try and say, oh yeah, you screwed up here, Master Saul. We were going to let the child go with you anyway. No. That just proves, once again, the Jedi did nothing wrong. But then, of course, Leslye Headland is out there and really just showing her true colours, who she really is. Because now she's talking about why she sees Manny Janko's Sith villain as an avatar for herself. So in that same interview with Collider, she brings this up. So Headland was asked by Levette, aside from the obvious allusions to other ships, are there any other enemies to lovers dynamics that informed the decisions you were making as you were playing with these two characters? And she answered, there are so many, but I am going to say no because I was really working from muscle memory. I didn't want it to quote something else. I wanted to just click into the kind of stuff that I wrote when I was in high school. I love these characters. Nobody wants to ship these characters more than I do. I love them so much. I love The Stranger. There's always a character that's an avatar for me that I really, really love. In Russian Doll, it was Charlie Barnett's character, Alan. From there, she explained, The Stranger is obviously a badass, but I just mean much more than his character. I'm not going around doing fantastic lightsaber battles and murdering people and being an all-round badass, but I would say that what he talks about in this episode and what he talked about in episode 5 is something I really dug down. The Osha's inner conflict fits with his ideology, and yet they're on opposite ends of the spectrum, just like she and her sister started out at the beginning of the show. I wanted to stay true to my characters. I tried my best to just stick to the tropes and the stuff that I loved and tried not to think about, especially with the classics. I think it would have been a little too quotes around it if that were the case. So you're just hearing her talking garbage, and it's like, and if I was going to tell a story about bad guys, it seems to me that the place to start should be a familiar relationship where one person is adamantly convinced of her correctness and the other person is also adamantly convinced of her correctness. We don't speak. I think this will be a surprise to her, and yada yada, and she just goes on and on and on and on and on. The woman speaks absolute garbage. Like, it's literally word soup that this dopey bitch just goes on and on about. And the people interviewing her are just as retarded as she is, asking these types of stupid questions. Like, the Kiadi-Mundi thing came up in another interview with the dumb bitch who went after Nerdrotic on Twitter over Doctor Who. Told him get out of her fan base, her franchise and all this. Gary simply replied to her, "Show me your Doctor Who collection," to no response. And like, she tried to brush the whole Kiadi-Mundi thing under the rug. Oh, the fans are just idiots. They're all upset over her birthday. It's nothing. It's not even canon anymore. No, Kiadi-Mundi's birth is 100% canon. It's not canon on Wikipedia anymore. Because after this show, and as soon as fans went, hang on, how can he be there? He wasn't born for another 40 years. Wikipedia, in real time, changed it. Changed his date of birth. Like, just look at these two idiots talking about this.
Leslye, how are you?
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you. So, my first question is kind of off the rails already because I want to know what they tell you at Lucasfilm. Because, like, I know the dumbest argument that people have had about the show about Kiadi-Mundi, and I'm like, here's the thing. It was deemed not canon anymore. And as someone who I know you also love a non-canon bitch in Mara Jade, what is kind of the deal with Lucasfilm and the stuff that was canon that is now no longer canon? How do they kind of tell you what you can and cannot do with it?
Well, definitely with well, there's Pablo
Yeah.
Hidalgo. So Pablo is always the person that I go to and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. I think it works for, these narrative reasons. But you let me know. I know that in Legends it's this, and I know that in canon it's this, but I'm not totally up to date in terms of how you guys feel about it as a studio. So I don't know what went on with Kiadi-Mundi. I heard there was some drama.
It's the dumbest thing ever. It's about a birthday. But I was like, it's not.
And there you go. You just see them. Neither one of them have a clue. And to talk about, oh, we love canon so much, except when we don't. The best thing about canon is you change it. That's not how canon works. It's just so annoying. And you can even see the shills out there that talk about this, and they are shilling hard. Check out the Grizzlies videos on that. It's ridiculous to see the shit they are saying. It's insane. But you wonder why the show is an absolute disaster, why it's piss poorly written, why the characters are horrible, why you're meant to be rooting for the villain, why in the end the Jedi did nothing wrong and yet they're trying to cover it up and make the Jedi the villains, even though the people you were supposed to root for were actually the villains. When they're out there championing, oh, little black girls finally have characters to look up to in Star Wars. Really? You want them to look up to being the villain? That's who you want them to be, the villain. Good to know. And we also can see all the idiots who write on this show, just how bad they are. In fact, we actually have exclusive footage of all of us who just think this show is the worst thing ever. We combined ourselves. We became the Force as one entity as we walked into the room, the writer's room, and we saw everyone working on the Acolyte, and we responded to them with this.
Bunch of slap-jawed faggots around here.
Leslye Headland, the former personal assistant of Harvey Weinstein, saying she identifies as the Sith. Yeah, I bet you do. Where are those bodies buried, Leslye? Where are they buried? Yeah, you were essentially the Sith, sending up the poor young Jedi to your master. Hey, you definitely were the apprentice. Thank God this show is over. Thank God these people will probably not get a second season. Oh, we can only hope. And truly, I hope they just go away and stop talking about it, because they haven't a clue about Star Wars. So with that, I will leave it there for this one, and this will probably be the last video I will make on the Acolyte, unless they greenlight in season 2. And with that, cheers, and I will catch you in the next one.